Welcome back, Marvels. This is a disclaimer for this
This is
episode.
a serious topic.
If you're a man,
no,
you
you'll
may
still want to listen, because if you're a man and you have any women in your life, this will be
yes,
useful to you too,
yeah,
right?
yes, absolutely. Well, we hope
But
it will be anyway.
but we're going to talk about perimenopause and menopause. I could just see all the guys reaching for the dowel. Oh no, I'm not doing that.
I mean, I think there is really something to cycles, right?
Yeah.
Like women, we are built differently than men, duh. But
Mm-hmm.
I've come to understand that a man's hormonal kind of cycle is every hour. So
Really? I've learned different. I've learned that men have a cycle and it's more like a 4-month. It tends to kind of go more seasonally.
Oh, interesting. Because there's a joke amongst people who, amongst women's health people that are like, if you want a different answer from a guy, just wait 15 minutes.
Oh, that's terrible. That's what you mean by the hour. Yeah.
It's like they are constantly it's just kind of constant and very consistent, very evenly consistent.
But it also depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about like sex drive, they have a much higher sex drive because testosterone.
Right. I think this is
testosterone.
Testosterone is,
Exactly.
But for women, like, we have different phases of a month, and depending on what's happening,
in the context of neurodiversity, when there's a variation, it's hard. So if you talk about, I can remember, well, this is sort of interesting. So when I first got my period, I was 12, I think. My parents didn't learn. I didn't tell anybody until I was 14.
Oh my!
I hid it. And in hindsight, I'm like, what the hell is that about? Part of it was this feeling of like not wanting to be pigeonholed, because I had 2 sisters and a mom. My dad was the only guy, and I was kind of a tomboy, and not wanting to be like closed into this feminine identity completely. But other part of it, I think, was just my body was starting to do some different things, and I was freaking out. Your body changes, right? Adolescence. So even guys that are listening to this can probably, neurodivergent men that are listening to this have gone through menopause, or not menopause. Sorry, I hope you haven't gone through menopause. Adolescence, right? So you've gone through all that, so you know what it's like to have the shift in hormones. And if you're talking about folks that are wired in a way that we want things sort of homeostatic, we want them to stay the same. And now you've got this massive upheaval in your life from being teen and everything changing, your body changing. And then for women, that every month or however long your cycle is, and it varies from person to person. I was super lucky. My cycles were pretty easy, didn't have a lot of bleeding, etc., didn't have a lot of PMS type symptoms. I tell the story with permission of this client that I used to have. She had PMS so bad, she would fluctuate 15 pounds. 15 pounds.
My God.
And I sort of didn't believe her. And she for a year or so, she was talking about what her face would look like. And it just happened that our sessions never coincided with that. And then finally one day she came in and I was looking at her, I'm like, oh my God, what happened to her face? And it was huge. And we had enough rapport. And I was like, I think I know what you're talking about. Your face. She's, oh my God, my face is so bloated. That's like an extreme version. She actually went on medication for it and it got better. I think she then was only gaining like 7 pounds every cycle, which was still a huge change in your physiology, but it was half of what it had done prior. So those kinds of things that we talk about for any woman can really change behavior and how you think and how you metabolize and everything. But if you're talking about that on top of neurodiversity, I have a lot of people asking about that, a lot of older women asking about menopause specifically, because it is like going through adolescence. It's this massive hormonal change. And depending on the person, that can last a long time. I was in what we call perimenopause, which is like leading up to menopause. The definition of menopause is 12 consecutive months without a period.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get to
I think
month
they
11,
changed it to 10. Dana, I
did
think
they
they
change
changed
it
it to
10?
10.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I got to month 11 and I had it, and my doctor is, we're laughing together. She's like, nope, not yet. Mark the time. Sorry. Mark the time that I said that. So 12 consecutive months, maybe 10 now. But I was in perimenopause where you're having irregular ones. So again, there's no consistency. And for a neurodivergent person, this was really hard. Like, when are my favorite pair of pants going to feel okay? Or when am I going to wear them and be aware of my body like I want to tear my own face off? For 7 years. And that's very unusual to be in perimenopause that long. I think it's like 3 to 5, I think is what
Oh,
they say is the
they're saying
average.
now, Dana, 10. They're
So that's
saying now that perimenopause can last for 10 years before you move into that definition of menopause.
okay. For me, I was the outlier for a lot of reasons. Probably I have a pituitary cyst that causes other issues. It could have been doing
Oh,
that.
yeah.
But then finally, and I was always cold, so having hot flashes was sort of okay, temperature-wise. But what they don't tell you is hot flashes aren't just about temperature. It's this overwhelming feeling that comes with it. And I thank God that I am in a same-sex relationship, because we were kind of going through this at the same time. So I don't know. We would joke all the time, like, now I know that the poor men, when their wives or their partners want to kill them and they have no idea what's going on, at least we understood each other. Like, we could really understand the lived experience, and we're like, oh, I totally get it. But it was there'd be this upsurgence of this feeling of doom. My wife would say, I feel like every member of my family is going to die simultaneously. It's like, that's the way she would describe it. And it would always hit like 5 minutes after you lay down to go to bed. You get this overwhelming impact, this feeling of like anxiety. So we know that anxiety is this huge symptom of going through those up and down sort of changes.
Depression as well. Yeah.
Depression, anxiety,
Yep.
your metabolism totally changes. So things that you used to eat don't hit the same. Weight gain is a very real thing. Women out there that are feeling like you are failures, everything changes.
I feel
Everything
you.
changes.
For all
Yeah.
of you
Yeah.
out there. Yeah.
Anything that
Mm-hmm.
you look at, and we would joke that you look at something that you used to be able to
Yeah.
eat, and you'll gain weight. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a reality. This has been proven. Now, the literature is just starting to talk about this stuff, because again, it's a women's issue. It hasn't gotten a lot of funding, hasn't gotten a lot of research. There's commercials now where you see this vasodilating syndrome, and that is what hot flashes are. They're finally starting to put funding towards research to understand this kind of stuff. But I've seen so many people on TikTok, for example, that went in feeling like something's really, 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 really wrong. And the doctor's like, oh, you're in menopause. Oh, it's because you're in menopause. And it's usually like the male doctor or even a woman doctor who's been trained in that patriarchal system. And it turns out they have some horrific cancer or something that's been dismissed because they're like, you're in menopause. So it shouldn't be dismissed in that way. These are very real feelings that you're having. Your brain chemistry is changing. And I've told people, the light bulb's gone on when I've said, this is like going through puberty again. It's a different type of puberty. And then they're like, oh, okay. Nice. Remember that? Remember how fun that was? Same sort of thing. And then, like, for me, it has gotten to a point, at least the ups and downs of the cycle, because I am in full menopause and have been for a while. That's been nice. And now I'm like, how did I do that for all those years and have every month not the same? And part of it is you get in that pool and you're used to it, but it's very hard. And so I see people talking about girls who are neurodivergent getting their period for the first time, their body changing, and all women have a hard time. They really, really have a hard time with it. And you can speak to that.
I have seen this. Yeah. I mean, I feel like if I were to think about the trajectory of some of the adolescent girls that I've had the privilege of supporting from adolescence to adulthood.
Oh, nice.
There's a very rocky kind of time in that like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 kind of arena. And then we kind of do a little bit of stabilization, kind of coming out into our like kind of early 20s. But I will say, I think one of the most helpful things that you can do for yourself or families can do is know the person's cycle.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
understand what's happening. You know, where you're
And
going to
how
get
real it really is.
it, it
It
is.
really changes emotions, everything. It's real.
Yeah. And I think when you know that and you know what the cycle is very dependent for each girl, but there are different hormones that are being released at those times. And so, and for those of you out there, like your cycle, you start counting day one as the first day of your period. That's how you start
Mhm,
counting your
mhm.
cycle. But what we know is that you don't really, really want to get into things. You don't want big problems to be solved, and you don't want,
Yeah.
it's like, I think it's like day 12, it's like the back end of your cycle versus the
Mhm,
front end.
mhm.
So there's a lot, like, do that research. You know who I think does a really beautiful job about metabolic health and women's health is Mindy Peltz. I think her name's
Oh,
Mindy
okay. Haven't
Peltz.
heard that.
Anyway,
Uh-huh.
but she's a big, like, kind of intermittent faster person, time restricted, but she's all about women, like
Oh,
women's
nice.
health,
Mhm,
especially what happens in the body in
mhm,
perimenopause and menopause.
mhm, mhm.
But she really, really helps people understand how to track a cycle and helps other
Cool.
people in their environment understand what's happening in a cycle.
So great. There's
Because,
so many more
it's great.
resources than when you and
Yeah.
I were going through it, which is awesome, awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
cool.
And that it's legitimate. I mean, our
Mhm,
bodies, like, are meant for childbearing. I mean,
mhm.
we're just evolutionary
Yeah, our
standpoint.
genetics are set up to be able to bear children, and that comes with and pregnancy is a whole 'nother thing that I've had neurodivergent folks go through, and it's been really, really hard. All those
Yeah, and,
changes.
like, you see, like, women's skin and their
Mhm.
energy and their cognitive right in
Mhm.
ovulation. I mean, and you think
Yeah.
about, wow, of course it would be. I mean, if your job is to mate and
Yeah,
bear children,
yeah.
you that's your best time, right? Is during when you're ovulating or about to
Your
ovulate, right?
biological yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, hey,
yeah,
I need to find that person.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
you need that rest on the back half. Like,
yeah.
so, like, to know that, I mean, it's funny to me. I mean, I have a teenage daughter. And
Mhm.
for me, understanding when her cycle is and when mine are
Yeah.
for my husband anyway, I think those are life-saving techniques.
For him, poor guy.
I mean, because, like, just because, of the phase that I am in, and I am
Yeah.
squarely in pair, like, my body is like in, out,
Oh, yeah,
nope,
yeah,
out, in,
yeah.
no,
That was
so,
way harder, it was so hard, yeah, yeah, yeah. I wish I
yeah,
had known
so,
then the level
yeah,
of emotional upheaval and distress that it could cause. I had no idea. And a lot of it was in hindsight when I learned about it. I'm like, "Oh my god, that's what was happening." And it
yeah,
really is to me, I mean, I sort of was a believer in the power of hormones having gone through puberty.
yeah,
But when I felt like I could murderously, with my own 2 hands, with a
mhm,
knife, feeling
yeah,
every bit of it, kill someone, and it
yeah,
would last like 20 seconds.
yeah,
And then it's gone, and I'm like, "What the hell is happening to me?" I thought I was losing my marbles, and then I talk about it
yeah,
with my doctor, and she's like, "Yeah, that's perimenopause." I realize how
yeah.
much we are driven by our neurochemicals, and they're powerful things. Yeah.
They are, and hormones are signals.
Yeah.
They're the
Yeah.
things that signal other things to happen, and so,
Mhm.
this is kind of part of, I think, something that you and I talk about a lot, which is self-awareness,
Mhm.
self-knowledge.
Mhm.
This as a woman, understanding your cycles and how when your cycles are, what happens to you in the phases of
Mhm.
your cycle, that's part of your self-knowledge. You may not
Yeah.
want to go for that job interview or solve a
Yeah.
family conflict,
Yeah.
during certain times, just because you're not at your physiological, biological best.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about nowadays with the access to that knowledge. It's not like just the textbook in the library that literally is just talking about the cycle. Like
Yeah.
when you are, receptive to having ovulation. And I do the silly old science voice, like when we learned sex
Yes.
ed a million years ago.
Yes. Oh my
It's more
God.
to it than that. And so there's so much access to that online, both like sources that are, there's like a national menopause society and stuff like that that you could find really good info on. And like you said, learn about
Mm.
how your body operates, because if you have that knowledge, the context is going to change. Like if you're really crabby one day and then you get down on yourself, like, what's wrong with me? Oh, it's that. And then you can sort of be like, oh, I can forgive myself a little bit. That's what's going on.
Yeah,
It helps
self-compassion
that.
can enter,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no place, you don't build, constructive or real
Mm-hmm.
self-knowledge narratives without
Mm-hmm.
self-compassion. Like
Yeah.
it kind of doesn't happen. I also feel on top of like the societies and the groups and the acknowledgement is we've got a lot of cool apps.
Yeah.
Clue, for example, that
Yeah.
Clue app is like really helpful when you're
Yeah.
tracking and or whether it's your health app on your iPhone or you can do that as
Mm-hmm.
well, but really start understanding that for
Yeah.
yourself, and it's
Yeah.
it's a real thing. I mean, estrogen and progesterone
Yeah.
are real doozies
Yeah, and
in
it's
their own way.
my understanding, especially in perimenopause, isn't so much like the hormone in a stable state. It's the changing
Yeah.
it's your body's constantly. I mean, imagine being on a floor where the tiles drop sometimes, and then sometimes they're there, and you're having to. It's the rapid shifting that is so difficult. It's like your body doesn't know what to do. Yeah.
Well, and think about that in the context of neurodivergence, which
Yeah.
is change is not a friend.
Exactly. That's right.
In general. And so
Hmm.
the transitions and especially when you may feel a certain way but not have a context for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's when people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're bipolar. Oh my gosh, you're
Yeah.
schizophrenic." I mean, whatever, right? When that's not the case. So really, I would say just be empowered with where you are, and that
Yeah.
it's real, and advocate with your doctor, advocate with the people in
Yeah,
your
and
life.
there's other things I get to tell the story. So these things are the same, right? So 20 years ago, I found these shorts from the bath shoe outlet that I love, and I have like 18 pairs of them. So I've had them for like 20 years. I rotate them. They still look new. They started to feel looser in some spots and tighter in others. And then, of course, it's like this identity that women have. I'm like, oh my God, the waist is tight. The waist is tight. I need to lose weight. I need to lose weight. I need to lose weight. And I weigh less now than I did then. I'm like, why the hell don't these shorts fit? This is terrible. Going through the spiral that women will do.
Yeah.
And I finally gotten to the point where I found a style that's similar, because I do like the style. And I ordered a pair from another place that fit differently. So there's more room in the waist. And it sounds stupid, but it took me a long time to be able to say, my body has changed, where the shape of things are different, and I'm going to now say, okay, I've changed and it's okay, and I can get a different pair of shorts. I share that because on the surface it sounds so dumb, but the women that are out there are going to be like, yes, praise, preach it,
Yeah.
Dana, because
Yes.
there's so much tied up in that for me to
Oh,
actually start to wear a different pair of shorts. It's crazy.
oh, Dana, like, so this really resonates with me because I also have some things that I don't have a really varied closet. I mean,
Yeah.
this might be the brightest thing you'll see me in. But I am typically like a black on black kind of gal.
Yeah.
Because it's like it always goes together. I don't have to think about it. I might throw in some white in there. And if I'm feeling really, really like gray might come in. I don't,
Ooh.
but there are these pants that I've worn for years, and then
Yeah.
in this past year, I put them on and I was like,
The
right, like
shape
what,
changes. Yeah. Yep.
right? But what instead of that for me, what came up was shame.
Yes. Oh
Why
my God,
can't
I've
you
gained weight.
control
I gotta.
yourself? Why?
Exactly.
Why do you always
Exactly.
do this? Why da da da? Why?
Yeah.
Right? And the shoulds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've spoken about shoulds and shame, and as being
Yes.
like the true S words, right? Like that exist
Yep.
in our life. Instead of like kind of embracing where I am, and like obviously like thinking about my diet and making sure
Mhm.
but your diet also changes too.
Yes.
Like
And what?
your diet
Yeah.
has to
Exactly.
change,
Yep. That's right.
because, I'm not as sad as it is, my body is not so apt to eat,
Hmm.
a loaf of French bread anymore.
Well, you can. It'll do something different to it. For me, I've never been a huge meat eater. Like I would eat, but I enjoyed the filet mignon once in a while. And it was maybe about a year after fully being in menopause. We sat down for Thanksgiving dinner, and I was eating the turkey, and I had to run to the sink. Felt like I was going to vomit. And I've tried eating meat since. I can't do it. It makes me physically gag. And I talked about it with my doctor, and she's like, "That's actually a common thing in menopause." I'm like, "How have I not read that one anywhere?" Again, access to knowledge. And I'm like, okay. So I ethically have kind of wanted to be a vegetarian for a long time, but I've liked meat.
Yep.
And now I'm like, oh, it's no
Yep.
problem. So even that sort of thing kind of reminds me a little bit of pregnancy, because cravings change. I remember my mom saying she couldn't even have the smell of bacon in the house when she was pregnant, but she loved bacon otherwise. So everything changes. You have to relearn who you are, how your body responds, what it does, and everything. And we don't deal well with change. So arm yourself with knowledge, because that helps you tolerate the change, especially if you can learn what your body's doing, and then you can be a little more gentle and not go straight to the shame place with it.
Yeah,
That's where
empowerment.
we women go. Yeah.
Yeah, go to empowerment over self-flagellation, right? Like
Yeah.
go to the empowerment side of things. And
Mhm.
if you need permission, Dana and I are giving you permission to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
actually prescribing that if we had a
Yeah.
prescription pad,
Yeah.
But that's when you can, I think, when shame and shoulds, which are very restrictive, they really,
Yes.
really restrict your choices and your,
Yep.
and your feeling of being efficacious in your
Mhm.
life. So
Yeah.
we don't want that for you.
And then it all spirals from there, and you feel like you
It's
can't control anything,
awful.
and then you give up, and that's not good either. Yeah.
Right. And then you're really eating the whole loaf of French bread. That
Yeah.
asterisk, that's just a hypothetical situation.
Yeah. Oh,
Anyway, but no, it's really not. But I
yeah.
think like this is because that's when you can actually do something, when you can
Mhm.
acknowledge it and accept it
Yep.
about yourself, and that's where you
Right.
are anyway.
That's right.
All right. Well, we hope that if you're a man, congratulations for sticking to the end of
Sticking through the
this.
whole episode and hopefully learning something about the women in your life and why you feel like they're losing their minds, because they sort of are.
Because they are. And that it's temporary.
Yes.
And that if you didn't switch off the episode right when Dana talked about menopause, and you didn't switch it off when I talked about knowing your partners or your others or whoever's significant in your life, their cycle,
Yep.
brava.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Be good to you, as Dana says, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Hi, everybody.